Hi, everyone, and welcome back to episode 31 of the All Things Interesting podcast. For episode 31 and part 2 of our 3-part conversation with Dr. Molly Countermine, we take a look at the difference between empathy and sensitivity, talk more on attachment theory, look into compassion, the dynamics of parenting and human development, plus a whole lot more. If you enjoyed the episode or the show, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform, and drop a comment. So, with that said, let's jump right into things with our guest, Dr. Molly Countermine. Is there a difference between empathy and sensitivity?
Yeah, if you're calling, especially let's call it compassion
instead of sensitivity, or
instead of sensitivity.
Okay.
Because I think that's what Tesh means. So unless you're talking about sensitivity in terms of like somebody saying you're very sensitive, like, oh, you're too sensitive or you're too emotional.
Yeah, I think that's more of what I'm saying, but I'm curious
Okay.
as well as to your perspective on
So let's
using
talk
compassion.
Yeah. So let's say this.
do all
Let's
three
say,
ways.
yeah, exactly. Let's say empathy is, what it is, and when we're talking about it in terms of the way it's being researched. Empathy is feeling with another. So it's truly putting yourself in another person's shoes and imagining that you're feeling what they're feeling. Empathy, in that sense, is different from compassion because in that moment, empathy can go one of two ways. One, it can lead us to be compassionate. It can lead us to want to help.
And is that how you would define compassion, as wanting to help?
Right. So compassion is the desire to relieve another's burden, the desire to help, the desire to alleviate stress for another. I feel compassion, right?
Okay.
And hopefully when we feel compassion, then we're moved to do something about it, right? I can feel like I want, if I see the bombing in Lebanon and I want to do something about it. So I look for the organizations that are doing good work there and I make a donation. That's compassion. I might feel like I want to help, but I might not have the money to be able to help. It's still compassion because I feel like I have a desire to help, right? If I have empathy and it levels me to the point where I am now in what we call empathic distress, where I am frozen and I can't move because I'm actually now as distressed as the person who is experiencing whatever it is that I'm being empathic towards. Now I can't be compassionate because I'm distressed.
That's so interesting.
And that's, I think, what then Tesh is talking about being sensitive.
Right.
So I can't watch any videos of animals being abused.
Because of your sensitivity?
It is too empathically distressive to me. I can't even, if I drive by one of those animal moving trucks, whatever you call those, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, like with the horses or cows or
the chickens all
gosh, those are horrible.
Pigs. I literally almost feel like I might crash because I get distressed. So I don't need, this is what one of my mentors taught me this, I don't need to set myself on fire in order to put your fire out.
That's good.
So I or in order to feel like you're on fire, like, oh God, I want to help you, you're on fire. I don't need to set myself on fire to have empathy.
Right.
Right? I can just go straight to compassion. So I can just, and I've done this, set up monthly donations to the various animal, rescue sites that I know are doing good work, that I've done the research. And so my compassion is there, and I don't have to, because I am, as Tesh might say, overly sensitive in that area. And I wish I weren't, but I guess I'm glad I am, because it's certainly directed a lot of the decisions I've made in my life in terms of what I eat and what I wear and what I buy and that sort of thing.
So where does that sensitivity come from? Is that kind of a separate thing?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't know about it all until I was like 18. Like, I was one of those people, because remember, like, I'm 50, so I didn't grow up with an internet, and I didn't grow up with, a smartphone and immediate access.
There were dinosaurs then, right?
Yeah, then black and white photos, and I mean, it's kind of embarrassing, but like,
No.
You don't think about the fact that the chicken was a chicken, or that every dog isn't loved the way you love your dog, or that there are, seriously children starving in other parts of the world, and that there are, you don't see that. Right. It's not, and so when I first learned of it at 18, I was literally, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was just stunned, and I was stunned at my own level of intense reaction to it, like visceral reaction to it.
And so, sorry, Tash wants to ask a question. I keep jumping.
I've been wanting to add and kind of relate these three terms together, because the way I'm understanding or interpreting it is that you can be empathetic towards something that someone's dealing with, but to be compassionate about it, you have to have some degree of sensitivity towards that issue.
Like, care about it?
Yeah, because if I'm sensitive towards a certain cause and it bothers me, isn't that sort of the trigger or that fire that makes you want to be compassionate and take action?
Or does the sensitivity come first?
Yeah.
The sensitivity, then you become empathetic towards it, and then the compassion you make it.
Yeah.
Oh, we're diving deep.
Yeah. You have to actually also engage with it. So you have to choose to engage with whatever that is that you have a sensitivity towards. So maybe it's clean water for people. Maybe it's vaccinations. Maybe it's, who knows what it is for anybody. Maybe it's looking at like the fashion industry, and in terms of where our fast fashion comes from. You would have to engage with that, like whether it's doing research in terms of like, checking out who's done a documentary on it, or really seeing the ins and outs of what happens behind the scenes in those situations. And then, so I think, I don't know. I mean, Tesh, is what you're saying is like, so you could watch, maybe let's just say, I won't say you, I'll say a person could watch some form of animal abuse and not be moved, but watch some form of, kids working in a sweat lodge and be moved. And it would be that they just have a sensitivity towards.
Exactly.
Okay, so I would probably challenge that by saying I doubt anybody would just look at one or the other and be like, well, I'm fine with that, but not with that. So I think and we call them highly sensitive personality. We have a term for it. So I think you're either really sensitive or you're not.
And how does that happen?
So that's temperament.
Okay. I knew that it had to be something. That had to be something.
Temperament. Yeah, that's but it's also then temperament is either very much like it's this interaction between the characteristics that I bring to the table at birth and then the way I'm parented. So, right? Attachment is absolutely just the way I'm parented, except that when I'm difficult, like when my temperament is difficult, I'm harder to parent. So that's why it sounds like they're both so kind of intricately related, because they are, because that's why since the beginning of psychology and all these fields that we look at, we've been talking about nature and nurture, because these are the two things, right? And they cannot be separated. Right. They can't. They just can't.
As much as you try, you just can't.
One thing to really add on, this is just an example here, is compassion developed as you age. Because take, for instance, someone that was bullied at a young age, they would become very sensitive to bullying. And
not.
Well, there's two sides of the spectrum, but I'm saying, as an example here, say someone's bullied at a young age, and they become very sensitive to seeing others becoming bullied. So in turn, as they get older, they become more compassionate and empathetic to those who deal with those struggles, and they become the beacon of change.
Is it empathic or empathetic?
I think those are used interchangeably. I say, so I think empathic means I'm feeling. I think empathetic means I am putting myself in a position to want to be empathic.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? So the person that's bullied is then going to seek out that as a cause. They're going to engage with that more. So they're not going to they're not going to take up the cause of, fast fashion or animal rights. They're going to take up the cause of bullying because that's what their experience was. And absolutely, they're more sensitive to it because they experienced it. And let's go even a step further and say they probably have a little PTSD around that. Do you see what I mean? And that's where the psychologist would say their sensitivity came from that experience. But then I would say in human development, let's look at why they were bullied.
Oof. That's...
So, how does a bully, who do they target? Oh,
I thought you were saying, why were they bullied? The person who was getting bullied?
I am. I'm going to go there, too. Yeah, what about them?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about both. So were they bullied because they were, kind of awkward, or they look different, or they have an awkward person, they are too talkative or not talkative enough, or they're fat or they're skinny, or they're, brown, or they're, tall, or they're short, or they're whatever, right? So then one of the things we know about the ones that choose to bully is often they were bullied first. And they learned either I'm going to be bullied or I'm going to bully. So
do you ever see that a bully is bullied, and then they can either choose to then continue bullying, or they become compassionate towards those who were bullied?
Yeah, I've seen both. I've definitely seen that anecdotally that if you help the bully see that, what from the other person's perspective, and not because you're bullying them, but because you're saying, let's really look here. So an example is that when my daughter was in 5th grade, she was bullied by a new kid. And what was very interesting was the new kid targeted her. First of all, they had the same name, so I think they were both named Lucy. So I think the new girl felt like we've got this competition. But I also think it was that Lucy is really kind and my Lucy is really accepting and really loving and very sweet and sort of kind of wide-eyed and naive
but her temperament wasn't an easy baby, but she still is those things. So
yes
there's
so because they went to a friend's school, which is a Quaker school, when they were in elementary school, the school handled it very differently. They had a little circle with the two Lucys and a couple other kids, and they had a couple of sessions with just the two Lucys, and by the end of the year they were friends. Instead of, so the way that schools deal with bullying is what? They punish the bullier.
Don't get me started on that one.
Right. And that's the thing, is that when we look at bullies, they're damaged people.
Mm-hmm.
Even at a societal level, though, that's similar to how we treat people we incarcerate. So instead of helping them get better, we put them in the jail for years.
The quote of the conversation: "Don't get me started."
That's right. That's exactly right. There's a great project. I want to mention this because I want to plug it. It's called the Compassion Prison Project.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
It's amazing because it opens up this idea, it's not an idea, it's a truth, that that prisoners are basically the most traumatized population in our society. If you look at how many of them were abused as children, at how many of them grew up in poverty, grew up with no love in their life. They're, traumatized children who grow up to be traumatizers.
And it's just a pattern and keeps going.
Absolutely.
And keeps going and keeps going.
Absolutely.
Do you ever feel like there's an age where, because I'm the type of person where I'm like, I don't care what age you are, if someone tries hard enough and doesn't give up to show you that love, that it, and obviously they have to want to be able to get there, that we can reach someone. But do you think that there are some people who, it's just too late?
No. Nope.
Sweet. So I'm not crazy.
No, I just always believe that there would be hope. I mean, honest to God, I don't want to make anything political, but I when I look at the leadership in the country right now, I as a teacher of human development, I often think, oh my gosh, like what has happened to these people in their life that have made them so unempathic,
right?
That so narcissistic, so just incapable of putting themselves in other people's shoes. And I do believe that there's a great a visual, but I think I can describe it. If I were going to show you a graph and I would show you on one line we have the brain's capacity to change, and it starts at 0. The brain's capacity to change. 0 is or let's say, because we start in infancy, it's 100% capable of changing, right? Because it's basically now a blank slate. Then it's going to slowly decrease all the way down until we die. And then if I were going to show you the other line that says the amount of effort required for change, then that's going to be at like 0 in infancy and then go up to cross the line by the time we're dead.
because it
right?
gets harder,
Right.
but it's
because
still the possibility.
right. And then I would say, where do you think those two lines cross? Like, at what age do you think the amount of effort, that it would take to change exceeds, right?
18,
The ability to change. You think 18? What do you
Well, I
think,
don't-
Jen?
I mean, I would say it depends on the gender. I thought.
Well,
Nah.
yeah, we can go on to all that, but I don't know. I'm on first glance, because I'm just trying to picture this graph right now, and I'm feeling like it would always kind of be proportional almost. Like, I don't know if that makes sense looking at a graph, but that it will just kind of always, I don't know.
So the answer is, we think, from what we are researching, it's somewhere in the early 30s.
What?
So
That's good. That's a
That's
good
good.
thing.
I'm just surprised.
it
30s.
is. Well, and here's the thing. It doesn't mean that your brain at 30 is going to change as easily as it did when you were 5. But your brain at 30 is going to change a hell of a lot easier than my brain at 50.
Mm-hmm.
Or that my dad's brain at 76. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm here to tell you, as someone that just started really practicing mindfulness and truly a daily meditation practice about 4 years ago, I have seen a significant decrease in my anxiety.
And that's just from becoming more aware of yourself.
Yeah. And literally sitting still and practicing mindfulness for about 3 minutes a day.
Would you say it's a choice, really, as to whether someone goes down one path or another? I mean, this is just going back to Jen's point about if someone gets bullied,
do they become a bully?
Or do they become the person who protects others against bullies? What is really the trigger that makes them say, I'm going to choose this path or the other path?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's honestly probably that there was some adult in their life that took their hand and led them down the correct path.
So that's not a temperament thing. It's
it does, right.
Well, I guess it is kind of an attachment thing almost. Like with
it doesn't have to be a parent. It could be a teacher, it could be a coach, but it could also be somebody that you read about and got inspired by.
Mm-hmm. But so I guess if it wasn't the case where it's someone that you read about, let's think of, an elementary aged kid, in 5th grade. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, that's where an adult would seek them out to help them. But is there ever a time, where they do you think that they're at an age developmentally where they can make that choice on their own? Or is it kind of, if they don't have an influence to help them go one way or the other, are they able to process that and make that choice on their own?
Yes, if they're exposed to some knowledge, whether it's something that they watch or read. Because what happens, I don't know, Jen, did you take 239? Did you take the adolescent course? So what happens around age 12? You can start thinking hypothetically. So now I can start to say, if I do this, then that's going to be the outcome maybe. Mm-hmm. If I have a choice, I can imagine now, right? I can imagine myself walking down that path. I can imagine myself walking down that path.
Yeah.
Which path do I want to choose?
Well, I guess I was going to say, and this is probably I don't want to go on to a whole different tangent, but just thinking about, even though, at that age, we're able to think hypothetically, are they going to think about bullying hypothetically? Or are they going to be able, because you do have to kind of be introspective at that point to, how is the bullying affecting me? And, do you know what I kind of mean?
Mhm.
Like
I do. And I think that if the kid was going to choose at that point, I honestly don't think that at that point they would make this like, well, this is final and I'm going to be a bully. I think they might have an awakening of, I'm not going to be a bully.
Mhm.
But I think, I mean, you know, when we talk to especially males that are feeling like they have to be, you know, these big
Macho.
tough,
Yeah.
they are in so much pain,
Mhm.
and they just don't see another option.
Right. Well, this kind of leads into another thing that we were wanting to ask you about is, you know, family dynamics and
Mhm.
single parent households and children
Yeah.
of divorce
Yeah.
and just how much, because there's so much that goes into all of this.
Mhm.
Tash wants to add to
Yeah,
that.
I was going to say, because one of the things I've noted, and maybe the statistics have changed really over the course of the years, but
Mhm.
last I heard, divorce rates were like between somewhere around 30 to
I thought it was higher than that. I thought it was
50%?
like 60.
60. Okay, I thought it was 30
Well-
to 50, but that said, like, you have to think that has to make a huge influence or impact on the growth of a child and their own development.
And I
It
remember you
does.
talking about this a lot in
yeah,
class.
yes. Yes. So you're both right. The divorce rate ranges from 30 to 50%, and then for second marriages, it is 60%.
Okay. See, I knew it was somewhere.
Yeah.
somewhere.
The range is because it depends on a few things. It depends on the age of the parents when they get married, the education level of the parents when they get married, and socioeconomic status. So,
Mhm.
you know, if you're poorer, working class, the divorce rate's higher. But it's also all, you know, the variables kind of map onto each other, because lower education, like less education, lower SES, and younger marriage kind of hang together as variables, right?
Right.
So like Renee and I didn't get married until I was 32 and he was 34. I have a PhD. We have education, and we're in the middle, you know, upper middle class, middle to
Mhm.
middle upper class, right? So those are very protective against divorce. So our likelihood of divorce would be closer to 30% than 50%.
Okay. That makes sense.
But if you think
it's a
about
spectrum.
Yeah, but if you think about it, geez, that's still ridiculous. 1 in 3 couples that are,
Yeah, wow.
you know, what? At one point, and in fact, it was that same class, so Tesha kind of hangs with what you were saying there. In that particular class that Lucy was in, she was the only girl in her class whose parents weren't divorced.
That's crazy. How many kids were in the class?
There were 12 girls in her class.
Wow.
Right?
1 out of 12. And her parents were still together. And now
Yeah.
she was the only one. I mean, it's not,
It's
like, you
nuts.
think about it and it's crazy, but then at the same time you think about it and it's
Yep.
like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty normal. You know, I
Yep.
can probably name more people whose parents are not still together than are still together.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like, even my 2 best friends, like, their parents have been divorced since they were like 10 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah. Well, then you look at my parents. They
Yeah.
were 21.
Yeah.
I was 21 when that happened.
Yeah.
But looking
and
at
here's,
how that
you know,
affects the kids.
So yeah, I want to say this too, because I want to tie it quickly back into attachment. Remember that, you know, this attachment status that we get in infancy that we like had no say in and no memory of, right? In what we call non-clinical samples. So these would be just samples of average families, average babies, whatever. Only about 55% of babies are securely attached.
Meaning
that they view themselves as worthy of love, deserving of love, and that the world is safe and that you will take care of me and that my needs are met. 55%.
Wow.
Now, do you think the fact that the divorce rate is somewhere around 45%?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was going to ask. Is this because of, well, I guess we didn't really ask this question. To be securely attached, can there be a parenting style that maybe they are doing everything quote unquote right, but that child is still more insecurely attached, or does it go hand in hand?
Hand in hand. It's we call it a caregiver driven system.
Okay.
So yeah, it's literally on the shoulders of the parents.
Okay. And then, yeah, so looking at, you said 50% securely attached and the divorce rate being around 45%.
Yeah, right.
There's a correlation there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it. Because just because you're securely attached doesn't mean the person you're dating is and the person that you get married to is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like we need so many more studies of this because, I mean, they're just so expensive to do and they take forever because you'd have to study them from infancy and follow them until they're 45, right?
Right.
Right. So, all right, Tesh, I'm sorry that I forgot your original question because I went on to the attachment tangent.
So it was more or less around single parent households and to the dynamics or variations or outcomes change depending on whether a single parent is the mother or father. I know you compared like divorce rates.
Well, first we have to look at like divorce, and then we have to look at co-parenting.
Yeah, there's different
factors. And then
factors,
also if that parent is a mother or father, if they are co-parenting.
Right.
Lots of good stuff.
And the other thing that we didn't mention yet is how old you were when your parents got divorced.
Yes. So Molly, if you're ready to dive into this.
Yes. All right. So here's what we know. Age matters, but not as much as you might think.
Okay.
It matters a lot in terms of the type of reaction that a kid could potentially have to their parents separating. So the younger the kid, the issues then revolve around fear of abandonment, attachment, then guilt, then anger. Like now we're getting older, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then insecurity about my own relationships as we get older. The mother-father thing will matter most in the younger a kid is if the mother is the primary attachment figure and the mother leaves.
Okay.
So as much as we don't want to say there's a difference between moms and dads, what we should say, because it's much safer and actually much more meaningful to say it this way. It's not about moms and dads. It's about primary attachment figure and secondary attachment figure. They're not created equal.
Mm-hmm.
We're not built to be equally attached to more than one person. We are built to have a single primary attachment figure.
So now, and I'm just thinking when you think about that, like clearly because the mother is physically housing the baby,
there's no attachment.
The mother is going to be the primary attachment figure.
Yeah.
But can a child, let's say it's a surrogacy or, a more unfortunate happening that the mom isn't in the picture directly after birth, can the father become that primary attachment?
100%.
Okay, cool.
And And the attachment relationship that begins when the baby is in the mother's belly is only on the side of the mother. The infant, if the infant is adopted immediately after birth and within the first few days, weeks of life, there is absolutely no difference in attachment relationship between adoptive parents and
Well, I bet that's a very big misconception then
yeah,
about adoptive children not
now
ever being able to
attach.
have an attachment, and because
Right.
everyone says, well, I'm adopted, so
yeah, but remember that like that's if the adoption happens really
immediately.
quick.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you remember learning about the phases of attachment, it's about, you get about 6 weeks where the baby's like, I don't know who's holding me.
Right.
And then they're going to start recognizing faces, and then they're going to start bonding.
But what about when parents get divorced and the child has to live with one or the other for some reason or another?
I kind of interrupted the answer.
No, that's fine. Does it mean that if a parent gets divorced, that the child is still able to be raised properly and with a healthy mindset because of the primary connection and the secondary connection? They still have that primary caregiver, so it would seem like the child can still be raised in a right manner.
Yes, absolutely. So here's what we know. One sensitive, loving parent is better than 2 shitty parents.
Yeah.
It's just harder. It's just harder to be a single parent. So that parent is often under more stress, both financially and emotionally. Now, if parents are good co-parents, Jen mentioned the co-parenting relationship, they don't talk bad about each other. They don't downplay the other one's role. They don't, try and confide in their kid about, what a jerk dad is or what a bitch mom is. Then those kids have a way better chance.
Well, that's even the case. I mean, I think with divorced parents or non-divorced parents,
absolutely,
that co-parenting relationship.
But what about this though? What about the fact that there's the influence from a father figure and a mother figure? Doesn't a child need both of those for different reasons? So even though a child can be raised in the right way by a single parent as a primary, doesn't a child still require both parents to provide that, I guess, that connection from the male and the female?
No, because we see kids of lesbian couples and gay couples doing
That's a good point. Yeah.
Really fine. Because you can find role models outside the home, and as soon as you're preschool, you're already outside of the home anyway, being influenced by different adults. So, unfortunately, because we have so few male teachers until really high school, but there's some in middle school, but gosh, elementary school, we have hardly any.
Yeah.
But, we have coaches, then yes, then males can seek out males outside of their 2 moms, and females can seek out females outside of their 2 dads. So no, the answer is no, it doesn't bear any, responsibility on in terms
a father
of developmental
figure
outcomes.
or a mother figure.
No.
But unless like if it's a single parent, isn't providing that secure attachment, is that maybe when the father figure dilemma or mother figure dilemma starts to become more apparent?
Yeah, and let's say I want to have a relationship with my father, but I only live with my mom and I don't ever see him, and it's kind of being made clear to me that he doesn't want to see me, and
so that it's kind of a separate thing.
That would be devastating. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely. I had a question kind of back to the attachment thing, like the primary attachment, secondary attachment. let's say, and obviously, I'm thinking about Tesh and I in the future. Aw, cute.
Mhm.
We're planning on, you can't plan it, but to be just as important and just as involved, both of us, in our child's life.
Yep.
And I guess because I am the mother, I will probably be that primary attachment figure, and Tesh will be that secondary attachment figure. But does that mean that truly our child one day will feel more connected to me than Tesh? Or what exactly does that mean?
So if you were to ask me right now who my primary attachment figure is, who do you think I would say?
I mean, not thinking of anything, just
Your mother?
It would be mom, just because that's what everyone says.
So my primary attachment figure is Renee.
Oh, what?
And my guess is that your primary attachment figure at this point is Tesh.
Well, okay.
So
okay, go on.
What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Who's the person I want to comfort me when I'm upset?
Oh my gosh! So your primary attachment can change throughout your life.
Absolutely, and it does. It does, and it should, and it will.
That is, wow.
And it might even go from, depending on your own parents, it might even go from your parent to the other parent to a best friend to a romantic partner.
Wow, I didn't realize that. So as long as you have one, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mother or a father. You know, it could be a grandparent, aunt, uncle.
Question going back for a second here to the divorce discussion. So it seems as though like most males these days are really non-emotional. I would say sort of non-emotional. So the question here is, when I grew up, I was very, not to say apathetic, but I didn't show my emotions that much. So the point I'm trying to make here is, if two parents get divorced,
but your and
I'm just giving an example. This is a general example. If two parents get divorced and the male becomes the primary of the child, but they were raised in such a way or upbringing
to not show emotions,
isn't that bad for the child? Because you said it didn't matter whether both the mother or father became the primary.
Yes, that would be detrimental. And I'm going to tell you right now, Tesh, you don't even have to have divorced parents for boys to get that message. Because they start looking at their dad very quickly for direction and guidance and on how much emotion. Listen, ask any 9-year-old boy what it means to be a man, and he's going to say what?
I don't cry.
Yep.
I mean, it's true. It's true. Yeah. It's perpetuated throughout history.
Our child will not think that way, let me tell you.
Rub some dirt in it.
No.
Rub some dirt in it, right?
Rub some dirt in Dad's face, and you go cry however much you want.
So it's, but, and moms can be just as...
Yeah.
I mean, if you, I watched.
I have a really good example
on the baseball field. Yeah, they can be just as pick yourself up and rub some dirt in it and get on and quit crying.
I have a student. I mean, there's a whole slew of stuff, but one of my students' relationships with his mom, he wanted to, go give her that hug. I'm so proud of my grades, and the mom's just kind of like, yeah, it's great, whatever, like get off me. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Right? And think about, it starts early.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a great video, it breaks my heart, of a little boy getting his shots, getting his vaccinations. And he's sitting there, and you can hear his dad off camera, and he's saying, all right, now you're going to be tough. You're going to be tough. You're going to be a man. Be a man. and the kid gets his shots, and he's sobbing, and he's going, I'm a man. And he's 2.
I feel like, did you show that in class?
I did.
Yep, I remember that.
And of course, what happens is a lot of people start to laugh because it's sort of precious. And then I say, do you think that boy is okay?
no. It seems very detrimental to the child because aren't they going to grow up in sort of in fear to an extent or rebellious because of that?
Yes.
Well, then what does it say about us that we laugh? Because I'm sure
it's a natural human reaction to laugh.
So
like,
cute.
Right, right.
But why do we think that's funny?
It's, I guess, discomfort. Like, isn't it natural human behavior to...
It's sort of to laugh when you're sort of uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, geez, right.
Well, but there are some people that... So there's a lot of videos of, I don't know, America's Funniest Home Videos or like epic fails or whatever. And, you know, it's people essentially getting hurt. Like doing stupid things
right.
and
you're
getting hurt.
Dying laughing, right? Yeah.
And and like sometimes I'll even be dying laughing, but a lot of the time I'm like, wait, no, like that person is getting hurt.
Right.
And like I've more so been on that side where I'm like, it's not funny. They are getting seriously hurt. So why does that happen? Like, why?
So because you've put on your critical lens. You've put on the human development critical lens. Because I watch that video of that little boy now, because I show it every semester in 129. And I am, honestly, I cry at the end of it. I am emotionally in tears by the end of it because it breaks my heart. Yeah. That's how we socialize boys. Right. And then I remember, I don't know if I had found it yet, but I found a second video of a dad, and he's got his little baby, and he's going, look how it's all right, buddy. You can cry, you know. And it's precious, and it's like, why don't we do that?
Right.
Right.
Like, there's no reason to not. It's just kind of having to have that open mind and realize
exactly,
you know, what message do you want to be giving your kids? And I don't know, I feel like I can get comments here and there sometimes, I guess, because I put on again this critical lens a lot more. Oh, you're too serious. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's just a joke. I'm sure the parent is this or that, but is that mindset? Like, I don't know. Like, sometimes I'm like, wow, why am I being too serious?
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
it's kind of hard.
I say, because people say that to me a lot too. Well, not anymore, because then I come back and I say, do you think we live in a society that's okay?
Right.
Have you taken a look around at the level of stress and distress and mental, health issues and I mean, we're not doing all that great in our society right now. So,
can you want to come guest lecture over here in Arizona? Yeah. Come in. Let's talk to the staff of schools.
Yeah.
All.
If at a societal level, it's like very flawed. Mm-hmm. What can necessarily be done, or what could we do better as a society?
I'll answer this one: education.
Yeah, and then social emotional learning.
And then we probably shouldn't get started. But...
Right, but here's the point: you could teach and lecture parents, but going back to that spectrum where at some point it becomes a challenge to alter your mindset.
Well, and I'm saying not teaching the parents, it's teaching the kids.
But you going back to that though, you can teach the child, but even though you teach them, there's still that other influence of their parent because they're in the household most of the time.
Yeah, it's true. You're right.
You're both right. You're both right. We need both. But what we need, and here's the great thing, is that there's an intervention that works really well of teaching parents about sensitivity training and co-parenting during the pregnancy. And when we teach them, I mean, because if you think about like, oh God, like the prenatal classes, they're so stupid because birth is so unpredictable and it never goes the way anybody plans. So, to learn about, all the prenatal stuff, it's certainly interesting, but it's not going to help you. That's going to be over in like 9 to 18 hours. And then you have a baby. Wouldn't it be better to have prenatal classes that are teaching parenting and teaching co-parenting? And then we see that those results stick even for a 6 to 8 week intervention. prior to a baby being born, we still see differences in the results at 3 years and 4 years because the parents learned how to be parents, sensitive parents. And then they also learn to be nice to each other.
Yeah. Their whole relationship with everything and everyone in their life completely changes.
I think it really just boils down to people's interpretation and actual interest in making a choice for the better, though, because you could say as a parent, yeah, you know what, I'm going to take the steps and make the effort to be a better parent when my child is born. But when that child is born, it doesn't mean that every other parent out there is going to be the right parent or be a good parent to their child.
Absolutely.
Because when your child's out there in the real world and they're around other kids and other parents, that parent could be a really shitty parent influencing your child. And it's like, I did my best, but someone out there is ruining it for me now, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one thing that would help immensely is if we had paid parental leave for, a year. And so that parents weren't as stressed out during that really important formative first year.
What about also designated PTO for soccer games and plays and concerts?
Other countries do that.
I know.
I think countries in Europe, at least some, I don't know which specific countries, but I believe they designate it where they require parents to have at least 3 to 12 months. It's along the lines of that parental leave when the child is born, just to build that attachment.
Yes. But I was talking after that, you have your PTO, that's your PTO, and then you kind of have your at least how I have it, you have your sick leave hours, but then having a third category for parenting hours, so you don't have to miss those your child's important events. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I'm onto something.
Yes. But I also want to point out too, I've been thinking about this a lot, especially because of the pandemic, and when we look at the United States response versus countries in Europe. And what we often forget is that the size of the United States and the diversity in the United States is incredibly impossible to compare to any one country in Europe. Because the population is so much bigger. You almost would have to look at how states have handled it, right? Yeah. Compared to how European countries have handled it. And this is what I would like to say. If we could see even states take on, here's maternity leave, here's paternity leave, here's raising the minimum wage, here's universal health care, and it would be more doable, because what I see is that this incredible division at the national level of right versus left, of big government versus, don't tell me I have to wear a mask. Versus,
but it shouldn't really be a political right or left thing.
It's a very broken system.
And all of it is, right? All of it is political. Right. Maternity leave is political. Which minimum wage is political.
Don't get me started.
Let's hold all of these things hostage.
Molly, I'm getting us shirts that say, don't get me started.
I think, Jen, that you probably need to start your own podcast that's called Don't Get Me Started.
Yes! Oh my gosh.
I'll be your first guest on that one. Don't get me started.
That would be wonderful. Okay.
All right, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed listening to part 2 of our 3-part conversation with Dr. Molly Countermine. On the final part of the show, we're going to be diving further into attachment theory, discussing if it's possible to relearn foundational attributes later in life, asking what is the most important lesson about human development, as well as talking about getting into the field of human development and family studies, music, her upcoming book, as well as a few interesting closing questions. So, with that said, stay tuned for the final episode of this 3-part series. And thanks again for listening to the All Things Interesting podcast.